Found tied up in a suitcase on the side of the road, the fatal kidnapping of Valerie Reyes Part 1. Valerie Reyes was a 24-year-old woman living in New Rochelle in Westchester County, New York. She was born to Sal Reyes and Norma Sanchez, and was one of 4 siblings, with 1 older and 2 younger brothers. Valerie's mother described her daughter as a compassionate, intricate and selfless young woman who worked hard to enjoy the good things in life. In fact, people only had amazing things to say about Valerie and what an honestly delightful, loving and kind-hearted woman she was. She attended New Rochelle High School and as an adult was working at a Barnes & Noble bookstore in Eastchester, a job she loved, but she was very creative and artistic and actually had ambitions to become a tattoo artist, like one of her brothers. She even let her brother practice his designs on her when he was learning his new trade, which definitely takes a certain level of trust. Valerie was a bit of a homebody. She loved to read, sing, draw portraits of her friends, and take long nature walks around where she lived. The Reyes family were all incredibly close and supportive of each other, and Valerie was no exception. She was very family-orientated, and Sunday was a day she always looked forward to, as that was a day she would meet up with her mom and siblings and they would play board games, go to eat or to the park, and be all silly and affectionate together and have some quality family time. Although she had been afflicted with bouts of anxiety and depression during her life, Valerie was mostly a fairly upbeat girl, so it was greatly worrying to her mother, Norma, when on January 28, 2019, Valerie told her that she'd been getting anxiety attacks, and that she was becoming scared and paranoid and was afraid someone was going to murder her. Valerie had broken up with her most recent boyfriend on January 24, only 4 days before this conversation, so Norma asked whether something to do with this guy was making Valerie feel threatened, but Valerie said no, it wasn't anything to do with him. In fact, she wouldn't tell Norma anything more about what it actually was about, and left her mother with a pile of unanswered questions, ones that she'd never get to ask again, as that was the last time Norma Sanchez would ever speak to her daughter. Later that evening, Valerie exchanged a phone call with her best friend of almost a decade, Jeffrey Anderson. This conversation also seemed to be mostly about Valerie's current anxieties, as Jeffrey said he tried to talk her through her fears of being attacked, before saying goodnight to her at 11:30. The next day was Tuesday, 29 January, and Valerie and Norma had plans to go to Home Depot together, but Valerie never showed up and wasn't answering any of her mother's texts or calls. Norma assumed that Valerie was just overtired and needed to sleep, especially after being so upset the evening before, so she just let her daughter be. But it wasn't just Norma who Valerie was apparently ignoring. None of her friends or family heard anything from her that whole day. When Valerie then failed to show up to work the next day, that was the last straw for her family. Not only was it very unlike her to not keep in regular contact with him, but it was unheard of for the very diligent and hard-working Valerie to ever no-show at work like that. Especially considering what Valerie had said only the day before about being scared someone was going to kill her, her family just knew that something was very wrong. So that morning, January 30th, her family filed a missing persons report with the New Rochelle police. One of the first things police did was search Valerie's apartment. There were no obvious indications that a struggle had happened there, but forensic analysis was able to identify small amounts of blood in various places, a small blood stain on Valerie's pillow, 2 small stains on the bathroom floor, and another one on the toilet. But these were very small amounts, and weren't especially informative. Police also identified a number of items that were missing from Valerie's apartment, including her iPhone, her iPad, her wallet, and several items of clothing and bedding. These could suggest that Valerie had left of her own accord and so had packed some of her stuff to take with her, but her family and friends were insistent that she would not have just disappeared on her own with no contact, and that, combined with Valerie's recent concerns that someone had wanted to kill her, led police to believe that foul play was involved. An immediate person of interest was the boyfriend who Valerie had only just broken up with, as he could potentially have a strong motive to hurt her, depending on how he took this breakup. But he was fairly quickly ruled out as a suspect and actually took on a significant role in the search for Valerie. The police were looking everywhere in New Rochelle and New York City, with no joy, and so turned to the public for help, making sure pictures of Valerie and descriptions of the outfit she was last seen in, which was a green coat, black jeans and black shoes, were all over their social media. However, there were not really any proper leads until a week later, on February 5. It was 8:30 in the morning, and a group of highway workers were on a routine sweep of a public road in Greenwich, Connecticut, about 15 miles from Valerie's apartment. One of the workers noticed a suspicious red suitcase, about 15 to 20 feet away from the road in the wooded area that ran alongside it. So one of these workers approached this suitcase, opened the zip and then actually vomited from the foul smell that came out. Immediately, they called the police, without even checking anything more. When the police arrived, they discovered the suitcase contained the dead body of a young woman, which was confirmed 2 days later to be that of 24-year-old Valerie Reyes. Valerie was wearing jeans and an unbuttoned shirt, and was barefoot. Her knees and ankles were bound with a combination of white twine and packing tape, her wrists were tied behind her back, and she had more packing tape wrapped all around her mouth and chin in multiple layers. As it had been there for 2 weeks, her body was starting to show the early stages of decomposition, with her hands and feet appearing rather mottled. She had a multitude of injuries around her head and face, including a cracked skull, a broken nose, fractured cheekbones and a large hematoma. It looked like she had been badly beaten, with what was believed to be just her attacker's fists. However, her official cause of death was ruled to be homicidal asphyxiation. The tape around her mouth and the injuries to her face would have made it more difficult for her to breathe anyway, and then being trapped in this suitcase that she only just fit inside would have virtually cut off her air supply. Considering the manner in which she was found and that the location was not particularly secluded, police were able to determine that Valerie had been killed or gravely wounded elsewhere before her body was moved to Connecticut afterwards. But who had done this, and why?